Hello friends, and welcome once again to our online Bible study. Hope that you are enjoying this study of the life of Christ. I hope that maybe you know someone who wants to know Christ a little bit better, someone that wants to begin a relationship with Jesus Christ. And if so, you could use these videos to help them. My name is Paul Cartwright. I'm the preaching minister for the Webb Church of Christ in Dallas, Texas. And I am just so thankful that you have tuned in today. I would encourage you to like this video, to turn on your notifications, to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be alerted when new content is available. Last week we looked at one of the saddest instances in the New Testament, the beheading of John the Baptist. We know that he was the earthly cousin of Jesus Christ. We know that this made Jesus very sad. Today we are going to look at one of my favorite stories from the New Testament, one of the best instances of a miracle performed by Jesus Christ, and that is the feeding of the 5,000. We're going to look at Matthew's account of this today. I've always loved this story. As I said in my sermon Sunday morning, I think when I was a little boy I enjoyed this story because we got to have fish sticks in Bible class. But the older I have gotten, the more I have seen what a powerful example of the power of Christ that this is. So join me as we look at our text today, Matthew chapter 14, beginning in verse 13. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go into villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They said to him, "We only have 5 loaves here and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." And then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves, and he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces left over. And those who ate that day were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. First question I'd like to answer today is, why was Jesus in a desolate place? We've already mentioned that John the Baptist was beheaded. He was beheaded at the request of the daughter of Herodias and prompted by her mother. That head was brought to her on a platter, and it was a very sad time. It was a sad time because John was a good, godly man. He was imprisoned because he challenged the sinful life that Herod was living. And it was made worse by the fact that now he would no longer have his earthly ministry. Compounded by the fact that John, as we mentioned, was the earthly cousin of Jesus. This made him very sad. And so, while it does not specifically say in our text why Jesus had withdrawn to this desolate place, we can look at the patterns of behavior of Jesus in the New Testament. We can see that oftentimes when Jesus went to a desolate or a deserted place, he went to be by himself. He went to be alone with his Father and have some time of prayer, have some time to recharge and to refresh himself. And I love the humanity of Christ. I love that he was not afraid to show his emotions. I love that he too needed to go and to be by himself. We all have been in a place in our lives, I'm sure, where we've experienced some great loss, and we need to go and experience some solitude, some time alone. And I would encourage us to do that. I would encourage us to be willing to go and do that when we need to, but also, like Jesus, to look for the opportunities that God has placed before us. The next question I'd like to talk about today is, how can Jesus making time for this crowd be a lesson for us? Jesus only wanted to go and be in solitude. He only wanted to go and be with his Father. As I mentioned, we've all kind of been there at some point in our life where we just need some solitude, where we need to be by ourselves. And yet, there's always someone that needs our attention. There's always maybe even a group of people that need our attention. It would have been easy for Jesus to go further away and to hide. It would have been easy for Jesus to dismiss the crowd out of hand. That's not what he did. He put his own needs aside. He saw the opportunity that his Father God had placed before him, and he ministered to these people. He fed them physically. He gave them something to eat. We too have the opportunity, even in our solitude at times, to not think of ourselves and to think of somebody else, and see that as an opportunity, see that as a way that we can be a blessing to those whom we come into contact with. And in doing so, we may introduce them to God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and they may begin a relationship with God because of that action. Solitude is a great thing, and I believe there is a place for that in all of our lives, but let's never forget that God has also placed opportunities in our lives as well. What does it say about Jesus that he was able to do so much with so little? 5 loaves and 2 fish, that seems like a pretty small lunch, even for the young man who was carrying that small lunch. But the idea that Jesus was able to take the 5 loaves and 2 fish and feed 5,000 people is nothing short of miraculous. Because it was miraculous. It was a miracle that was performed by Jesus. Now you and I, we can't take 5 loaves and 2 fish and transform that into enough food to feed 5,000, 1,000, even 100 people. But Jesus could, because Jesus is the Son of God. While recognizing the miraculous power of Christ is important, I think there's a deeper lesson to be seen here. Is the fact that Jesus was able to do this with so little. He had very little to work with, and yet he was able to do something great with it. Oftentimes I believe that we think that we are so insignificant in the grand scheme of things that we're not useful to God. That Jesus certainly couldn't use somebody who had as little money as we do, or someone who doesn't have as big a house, or someone who doesn't have the earthly possessions, or someone who is even physically handicapped in some way. Surely Jesus couldn't use us, but nothing could be further from the truth. If Jesus could use 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed 5,000 people, just think what he could do with us. But I also think about that young man. What if that young man, when the apostles approached him and asked him for his lunch, if he had said, "No, this is my lunch. I brought this for me to eat," and didn't share it, what would have happened? Well, I believe Jesus would have found another way to feed the crowd. There was no shortage of ways that Jesus could have taken care of that, but that young man would have missed out on a great opportunity to be used by Jesus. When we refuse to allow Jesus to work through us, to work through our possessions, to work through the things in our lives, we're denying ourselves the opportunity to be a part of Jesus' plan. And I dare say that if we deny Jesus, that he will find someone who will not deny him, that he will find someone to work through. So if all you have to offer is 5 loaves and 2 fish, I say offer those up and see what God, through Jesus Christ, through the Holy Spirit, can do with those things. We still live in a world where there are opportunities. We still live in a world where we're going to be sad at times, and we're going to need some isolation. We're going to need some solitude. But we also live in a world where God will work through us, through Jesus Christ, if we will allow him to. So I challenge you today to allow yourself to be a vessel for the workings of God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I hope that you've enjoyed our video today. I hope that these are a blessing to you. I hope that you're able to share them with someone. Please remember to like this video, to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and to turn on notifications so that you can be alerted when new content is available. I hope that you have been a blessing to someone this week. I hope that through this study of the life of Christ, you are learning more about how to live like Christ all the time. God bless you, and have a great week.